From Acres USA, you are listening to the Acres USA podcast, a conversational podcast where we'll explore sustainable farming, regenerative practices, and the latest innovations in eco-agriculture with some of your favorite farmers and ranchers. I'm your host, Taylor Henry, the owner and CEO of Acres USA. Welcome to the Acres USA podcast. All right. We are live. We're joined with Kaleb Hanshaw. Kaleb is from West Virginia in the Appalachians. He's director of Reclamation and Mediation at Coalfield Development, co-founder of the Wild Sea with his wife, Krista, and he's certified in permaculture design under Jeff Lawton. We're going to talk a little bit about homesteading, some land acquisition plans, and a little bit about what Kaleb does on his own farm and homestead in the Appalachian. So, Kaleb, thanks for joining us. Appreciate your time.
And Taylor, thank you for having me. It's took us a couple tries, but I think we finally had the stars aligned to do this one.
Yeah, we just went back to Zoom. Yeah, the technology world was not playing friendly with us, but we're okay now. So
we're good now.
So yeah, tell me what it's like. You guys live in Mingo County in West Virginia. Where's that at? And what kind of ground are you dealing with over there?
We live in coal country. It's the heart of the billion-dollar coal fields. We have a rich history in mining, especially strip mining now, where they kind of blow off the top of the mountain to extract the coal. I live in an area historically known as Hatfield and McCoy country. I don't know if you've ever watched that TV show. It's got my favorite actor in it, Kevin Costner. And they depicted our area through the Hatfield and McCoy area. So I'm right on the border of Kentucky. I have 6 kids, all homeschool. We have been homesteading for a couple of years, going around 12 years now. And I'm blessed to be able to work on restoring these post-mine sites and making them usable again, not just for the landowner, but for the community around. So happy to be here and talk about that.
So what are you dealing with when you come into a post mine site? What does the geographical area look like? I mean, I'm sure you guys are dealing with pretty steep hills, but what does a former mine site look like?
Sure. I specialize in strip mines, so I'll talk about that. You're dealing with, there is a reclamation process after this industry is done strip mining. They do reclaim it, they do hydro seed, and there's this saying, if it's green, it's good. And they're going to plant a lot of species that will pioneer and will grow fast. So we see a lot of people will say invasive. So you have a lot of invasive species that they don't give room for other things to grow. And the water mapping is a little bit off in terms of being susceptible to soil erosion. So we will come, depending on how long this land has been sitting, we will find a lot of bare rock, a lot of hard dirt, a lot of water issues where soil erosion is happening, and a lot of pioneer species. 1930s, they would purposely plant, kudzu in Appalachia just because it would grow fast and it will spread. They planted it along the roadways to prevent for soil erosion there. And we have 2 main species in Appalachia is the Lespedeza and the autumn olive. Sometimes people cuss when I say autumn olive. Like, oh, I love that devil bush. But that's typically what you find. It's amazing to see how, Mother Nature begins to heal on her own without any of our interruptions or the work that we do. All we try to do is just partner with Mother Nature and speed that process along. So it's a really fulfilling job.
So going back a little bit in your background, did you grow up in this area? What made you, kind of end up where you are right now?
Yeah, I did grow up in this area. The coal mines, it's a familiar job for where we live. Everybody's grandpa was a coal miner. You'd see the sea of black faces at the ball games. Like they would come and get out of work and they'd show up at the ball games with coal dust all over their face. So there's this nostalgia there for me. I didn't have a background in growing anything. I'm sure, my grandmother probably grew a tomato at some point in her life. But to the extent I didn't have a background in that, my background was in ministry. I was a pastor for 10 years. Um, and at the main end of that tenure, I felt like God was asking me to go a different route. And through prayer and through asking, just for something authentic and real in terms of relationship, my path looked like simplicity. So it went from having zero grid for agriculture to I grew my first cucumber, tomato plant, and lettuce on a portable, bought from Amazon uh, sack where I could move it on my porch. And we had our first meal with some friends. And I thought there's something to this. There's something to this simplicity. There's something to growing your own food and being connected. And then from there, I, got into, the Joel Salatins, the Justin Rhodes, the YouTube explosion with all this content. And then I ran into this little project called Greening the Desert. And it was Jeff Lawton working in Jordan to regreen that space. And I was hooked. And from that, we started to homestead. We started to learn a little bit more about where our food came from. And it made a lot of sense to me to really fall into the regenerative ag space because I'm surrounded by strip mines. I'm surrounded by land that could be available if you knew what to do with it. So I went into the permaculture route, and it is something once you step over that line, you can't go back. Just what you learn and the ethics and the weight of this work. I think, well, I felt like I won the lottery in a sense because you live in a rural town, especially West Virginia. Coal is on the decline. It's starting to turn into this potential ghost town. People leaving, dilapidated buildings everywhere, and I'm thinking, wow, I just found the key to reclaiming not just land but community. So I fell in love with permaculture. I watched all I could on it. I read all I could on it. And then I ended up taking an online PDC with Jeff. And then I needed more. I needed to fly over to Australia and actually spend time and to see and to do some work there. So that's kind of my background. I didn't have, and everybody's surprised by that. I'm like, did you go to school for this? Like, no, I didn't go to school for that. I guess School of Hard Knocks works in this area too. Just a lot of trial and error and passion. I am just amazed at if you're passionate about something, how much you can absorb.
With most places that you're looking at, I have some photos here that you'd sent me. Um, I mean, are we looking like are most places kind of looking like this, where you have a lot of rocks and just not much dirt and soil to work with?
Yeah, especially if it's about 10 years to 15 years post mining, you're going to have a lot of bare rock, and
Yeah.
that's overwhelming for someone that wants to farm. But with the approach that nature does heal herself, it doesn't have to be overwhelming, and it actually opens up an opportunity for those that need land to farm on, which I have found is becoming a huge opportunity for those that want to reclaim Appalachia is these lands. So yeah, you're looking at water issues, you're looking at bare soil, bare rock, and if it's a little bit further along, let's say 20 years, it may be green, but you're looking at a lot of autumn olive, a lot of Lespedeza, a lot of what we would call pioneer species that would also be overwhelming. You're not going to grow a tomato plant unless you do something. So,
So what are most people starting with? Are you starting with the water management? What type of seed are they putting down? What are the first steps of transitioning these types of properties?
yeah, I think, and this is where the permaculture background comes in. The most important thing is design. Because if you're not following something, you're guessing, and you can lose a lot of resource that way. So, what we do in our approach, and it's probably not a one size fits all, this is what we found that works, is we will observe the land. You can go ahead and do practices that that work. regenerative grazing, that works. That's going to happen. Go ahead and start there. You have to address the water sooner than later because that's the one thing that can take you backwards. You can spend all this time reclaiming pasture, doing multi species grazing, and then all of a sudden you have an act of God rain and it washes it all out. And it's almost like you're starting over from scratch. So, what we do is we observe the landscape and we make a design as quick as we can. And we follow that design. Now, that design doesn't have to be, concrete, doesn't have to be rigid. It can adjust by more observation. But addressing the water sooner than later is very, very important. And this is where a lot of people that have tried to do reclamation work is they go and do like a one size fits all. There's not a property that we've been on that we've done the same thing with.
Mm-hmm.
Observation is, I'm talking, watch it for a year and see what sectors you have, see where the sun is up and down, see where you have weird noises. I mean, to the minute things that may cause an issue, you want to observe it, because if you're observing that Mother Nature, you're partnering. Now, if you want to go on and do a one size fits all, you're trying to kind of force what you think should happen. And we've learned that the hard way, trying to force our will on this thing. It's so much easier in union with nature.
Yeah. When you say, installing a water management system, are you installing terraces? How are you installing them? What's like the key focus that you're looking at?
Yeah, well, what's interesting is water is the biggest liability on these lands. So you take something that's lowering the property value, it can be contaminated, it could be running really, really fast on this landscape. And usually when water runs fast, it takes a lot of things with it that you don't want it to. So we approach this and we try to flip it on its head. How can we have this become an asset? Not a liability, but an actual asset to the farm. How can we slow it down to where we can use it in multiple places on the farm? And the way to do that is using the landscape itself, the topography of the landscape, the contour lines. How can we spread water? How can we catch water at high elevation and then begin to slowly release it along the landscape? So we like to dig ponds. We like to follow contour lines because water is always flowing at 90 degrees of contour. So we'll look at a topography map and we know exactly where we need to put ponds, preferably at higher elevation, and then we'll use swells to move it along the property. That is a beam that's cut out in your pasture or in your landscape, and you can actually plant on this beam fruit trees, plants, all types of vegetation, and that water is not flowing there. It's actually filling up there. So as it fills up, it's spreading. And then you do spillways in certain spots to go to other swells. So it's this phrase we like to say, once you lose the water, you can't use it again.
Yeah.
So you want to capture and move it along the landscape as many ways as possible, whether you're feeding animals, whether you're feeding vegetation. Where water runs, we want to make it walk. So that's the fancy saying that I like to bring out every once in a while.
So what are the tools that you're using? Are most of these places you coming in with a dozer and connecting these ponds? You put the ponds in first, swales in second.
Yeah, and what's really a blessing to us is partnering with heavy operators. If we're going to dig a pond, you want somebody that knows what they're doing. And for us, it's these miners that
Yeah.
are already working on the landscape before, that are putting in water systems already. They're the easiest to work with because they understand the language. They may look at you weird on like, why are you wanting to do this? But they're people that you can trust to just walk away and they're going to get it done. This is scalable. You can do this with, a laser level and a shovel and dig out swales. You can do this with heavy machinery, which now we grew where we were able to use that. But when we first started, we used an old school A-frame with a weight hanging on the bottom. This is a Jeff Lawton thing. So, and we just went and drew out our contour lines and dug it by hand. And luckily we could prove the concept to where we could raise more money, use heavy equipment, scale up to bigger landscapes. Um, but the best thing to do is to partner with local people. Not everybody can afford to go out and buy, an excavator, but you can find somebody that knows how to run one and rent one. And but yeah, it's scalable, just depending on the size of the landscape.
Yeah. And then what tree species are you guys focused on in that area to plant along these?
Yeah, we try to use native species. Appalachia, you have, your chestnut. You have a lot of different species you can use. A lot of the reclamation jobs use a lot of pine, which grows really fast and seeds really well, but falls down pretty easy. It has a short lifespan. We like to go with fruit and nut producing trees and nitrogen fixing trees. Any trees that we can, establish a windbreak, because a lot of the landscape that we have is susceptible to wind. Through observation, we know there's a lot of issues in certain areas where we need to have a windbreak. If we're going to restore an ecosystem where insects can come back or bees can come back, they're going to need a windbreak. So we'll plant shrubs as diverse as we can, but as native as we can. That's how we like to approach the project.
Hey everyone, hope your summer is going well. Just wanted to update you on some events that we have for the end of summer here in the fall. August 6th, we'll be in Oklahoma for an organic transition field day at Acadian Family Farm. That's a free event. August 19th through the 20th, we'll be in Spring Green at Gary Zimmer's farm, and that'll be a event hosted with Gary and Savannah Institute talking about installing perennial crops into cropping systems and grazing systems. And Gary Zimmer will be a speaker there, Mark Shepard, and then some folks from Savannah Institute. September 10th, we'll be in North Dakota, which is again another free organic success field day at Minokan Farm with Jay Fear. And then September 12th through the 14th in Viroqua, Wisconsin, we're going to have a water earthwork live harvest demonstration and intensive workshop with Mark Shepard and his RAD team. So if you ever wanted to see how to put swales, berms, and water systems in and learn from Mark for 3 days, that'll be a very good, highly intensive event. And it'll be probably a little bit smaller group. So these are hands-on gatherings designed for you guys who want to build healthier soils, stronger businesses, and lasting resilience. And I also want to mention before I wrap it up here, we have our 50th annual Eco-Ag Conference this December 1st through the 4th in Madison, Wisconsin. And we are bringing a giant lineup again with people like Joel Salatin, Gabe Brown, Rick Clark, John Kemp, Will Harris, Neil Kinsey, and many more premier regenerative agriculture speakers. And I think it's going to be one of the best events ever put on in the regenerative agriculture space. So go ahead and check out more, register for our events. You can head to acresusa.com/events, and you'll see everything there. What are you looking at on the land that gives you the signs to say that a windbreak should be here?
We will do an understory and do a shrub wall. It's amazing what you can do with just, growing a diverse windbreak. My favorite is honeysuckle. A lot of people don't think to use it, but when that wind, not only does it block the wind, but the little wind that it does allow through, it releases this really awesome honeysuckle smell. So again, that's creativity. It's we want to use bees. A lot of people raise bees here. Bees are going to be a bad deal if you have a lot of wind coming in. So we try to utilize as many species as possible, that if they can bring a fruit, or if they can bring some form of nut, or if they can fix the soil, we want to plant those species first.
Are you mainly working with homesteaders, or, what is the long-term goal as far as the economics and different things that you've seen while you work with folks?
The beauty of it is it's scalable, and we've worked with both. types of people. The one client has, 0.03 acres, and by design, they've grown 60% of their own food. Not only have they done that, but they are starting to reclaim just that little piece that they have, what they've been entrusted with, and they've used that to then highlight what they know. And now they're getting invited to bigger plots of land. And then you can scale it up to, 1,000-acre projects that we've been approached by. It's scalable either way.
Yeah. And then what are some of the signs that, you're moving in the right direction? What are some of these folks seen as a result of, 2, 3 years after these systems get installed?
Yeah, one of the things you can measure, it's the easiest one, is what species, what vegetation is now growing now versus 3 years later, because the vegetation is going to tell you the condition of the soil. What we look for is increased diversity in the pastures. We look for signs of erosion. Have we fixed the water issues? Are the animals on these properties, are they thriving? Are you growing food? What And for a landowner, they're not so much concerned about soil testing like I am. They're looking for, equity in their land. They're looking for their property value to increase, which understandably is important. So they're not really concerned about, their pH level, but those are signs for us as permaculturalists to see how the land is responding. And we see it in waves. That when you first start, especially in these lands that we work with, you see it's almost like a black and white movie. There's not many insects, there's not many birds. And it's almost like you don't appreciate it until you don't have it. Stepping on these lands, it's almost kind of eerie. And you'll see phases where these species begin to return. I remember we started growing our first year a big garden. It was container gardens. It wasn't directly in the soil. And we had this huge influx of grasshoppers. It felt like a plague out of Deuteronomy. I mean, it was like, what are we going to do about these grasshoppers? And the industry will say you can spray for these grasshoppers and protect your plants. Even the organic spaces say you can make this concoction of, cayenne pepper and onion and garlic and spray it over your plants. Or you can wait and see how Mother Nature responds. We decided to do the last one. And over time, we start to see these orb weaver spiders begin to put their webs in our veggie gardens. So they would eat the grasshoppers. They didn't completely eliminate the grasshopper, but they brought the grasshopper down to a manageable amount. Then we start seeing that just compound. Different species returning into the ecosystem. And then you start to see the ecosystem begin to be balanced. And that's the main measure. How many species have come back? How many predators have come back? How is the microbiology in my soil? Am I seeing mushrooms? Are mushrooms, especially in strip mining, you want to see a lot of mushrooms because that means something is getting filtered out by these mushrooms. So there's a lot of different measurements. But an easy one is, what species are growing now that weren't growing before?
Yeah. And would you say most people are planting perennial grasses, uh, in between the swales and grazing it with some sort of livestock? Or are you seeing actual like annual crop production in these swales as well?
The swales, I would grow like a cover crop like clover, because these walkways are going to hold water, especially when there's a huge rain. I'm going to copy the Dohertys on this one. We try to observe, what's growing and how can we match a ruminant to what's growing. And a lot of people can go and get a good dairy cow pasture seed and reseed. We use a lot of pigs that will root up these what we call invasive pioneer species. We can plant behind them a good dairy pasture seed. What we have found, thankfully, through the Dohertys and their advice is we will go get hay from a local farmer and we'll spread that hay around on these fields so that we can grow things that are native to our area. Grasses that, and it's not going to be a pasture that you see, on the internet that's pristine and you know we're going to have a lot of weeds in that. We're going to have a lot of different things. We're going to have a lot of goldenrod in that. We're going to have a lot of species that, again, there's a purpose for them. We have a lot of dandelions. What are dandelions doing? They're mining calcium deep down within the soil to the surface. So I think just matching whatever you have that's growing to the animal that will eat it, but also allowing that animal to re-diversify your pasture. That animal's going to do a lot more than what we can do. Um, so from that, we still try to plant as many species as we can. Even a vegetable garden, we try to plant as many species as we can, just so we can see what works and what doesn't work. Um, Around year 2 from the reclamation side, we can go right into the ground, and that's usually from compost that we've created from these animals. We probably still can't get directly into the ground because it's so hard. So instead of trying to loosen up the ground that we have, we add on top of it, begin to add more and more and more every year. Um, so we've grown from your typical vegetable gardens to things that have a purpose within the soil. And if you're multi-species grazing, it's almost going to plant itself because it works as a supply and demand. You have a lot of Cecilia lespedeza growing on these post-strip mine lands. Well, they're a nitrogen fixer. There's a demand for that species. So you'll begin to see species that pop up that are providing for your poultry or providing for your sheep that you didn't even plant. Maybe it was just sitting there waiting for the right time to sprout. So that's kind of our model. It's a lot of it's a lot of trial and error and just feeling it. People don't want to hear that either. Like sometimes you may speak on this a little bit, Taylor. Sometimes you just feel something like you didn't read it in a book anywhere, or you haven't seen an example of it. You're just like, man, I feel like I should do this. I feel like I should try this out, and then it ends up working. So a lot of that has happened.
Yeah, I think you have, once you're in tune with your land and you spend a lot of time on it, I think you have a lot of intuition
Yeah.
that guides you and steers you. Um, have you, is it too steep to come through and mow these pastures, or are you or are you able to in some areas? Have you seen an improvement where you're able to mow, or is it just too steep?
Yeah, I mean, you see both. The areas that are too steep, they're probably full of autumn olive anyways. So you don't really have a lot of grass to mow, and you can, put goats on it if you want goats. I personally try to steer away from the devil eyes of goats. But on the other places where you can get a mower on, yes, absolutely. Because in reclamation, if you do it right, a lot of people rotationally graze in a grid pattern. That's not the best way to do it in terms of reclamation because it's just not going to grow back that way. We want to hit certain spots, and sometimes it gets really overwhelming depending on the size of the land. You want to hit it with a mower. Um, the biggest issue we have is the rocks. Is having these big boulders and these small pieces of slate rock that a mower will have a tough time staying healthy. It's going to be real rocky, but
Yeah, I'm
we
sure.
try to we try to maximize our spaces depending on the size. I would rather have an animal mow it because the animal's not just eating; it's doing a lot more for me for what I need it to do, especially in the soil biology.
Yeah. Yeah, my sense would be we call them hay bombs, or you hay bomb an area where you winter cattle and just bale graze it. I feel like that would be my first.
We do that a lot,
Yeah.
especially at the beginning stages, and that kind of going back to getting the hay from a local farmer. We'll put it straight on the ground. They'll eat it. What they don't eat, what they trample on, we'll spread it out, and we'll do it in small chunks, a small paddock. That way we have, 3 to 4 to 5 inches of that hay sitting on that piece of ground.
So where are these guys growing their hay? Is it off the mines in
Yes.
different? Yeah.
Yeah. Just finding a local farmer that doesn't spray, and kind of farms the way that you would eat the grass yourself, straight from the bale. But looking at the health of their pastures, and a lot of these farmers around in Appalachia, southern Appalachia, they haven't seeded. They just whatever is grown there forever um, stabilizes that land. So we kind of want to try to grow those same species that are
What
close.
is what is the majority of the agricultural production in that area?
Hay,
Hay
hay, you have corn
and livestock.
and livestock. You'd have to go a little bit north or even into Ohio to get those large monoculture crops, crop fields. But the smaller ones mostly are hay.
So you guys work quite a bit with people that are looking to acquire the land. You want to talk about like the economic difference between like what is a price per acre of one of these strip mine areas versus, the place that you were to get hay from that hasn't been mined.
Sure. Yeah, we have found that this is kind of our niche. I know what it's like to want to farm and want to homestead and not have land to do it, and figuring out, where can I find land? Uh, for us in West Virginia, 85% of the state is owned by outside entities that aren't from West Virginia. So it even is even more slim where we're
Who
at.
owns it?
Mostly timber companies,
Yeah.
bonding companies, industrial companies. And that's been like that for a long time. So, so I know what it's like to really. It's hard to find a place to homestead. Um, I think that's changing now, especially where we're at, because there's a lot of this type of land available. And if you're really creative, you can find yourself having a really good deal, because most of these lands, they don't know what to do with it. They don't know how to reclaim it. It's becoming a liability for the owner. So we've
Well,
had,
they pulled the money off of it already too with the mining, right?
yeah, they pulled the money off of it. There's a regulation to where they have to put their money into what we call a bond. So all through the production area, as they're making profit, a portion of that goes into a bond for reclamation. So when they're finished, in order to get that money back, they have to fulfill the regulations of the reclamation. That's where you have, the hydro seeding and, with mountaintop removal, they'll try to save some topsoil and put it back. Um, but a lot of these mines are sitting there and they're going down in value because of the liabilities. I know I'm going a long way around to answer your question. We get approached often to be paid to take the land. So it completely flips it on its head. So I will pay you a certain amount to take the land, to reclaim it. That way, I got a piece of property that I can farm. That company gets their bonding money back if we're showing a plan and we're reaching those levels of reclamation. So it's almost a win-win. Or they just want to let go of the liability altogether. We can then purchase that land very, very cheaply. You're talking about, I think there was one for 100 acres. If you're doing pristine pasture, you're looking at, $15,000 to $25,000 per acre, because there's just supply and demand. Now,
Yeah.
we don't have a lot of people buying farms like that. Um, we see a lot of, if a family farm is going up for sale, there's going to be a company that ends up buying it and developing it. That's what we see a lot here. It's probably a lot where you're at. Um, but these mine lands, you can get 100 acres for $2,000 to $3,000 on the acre if they want to get rid of it. There's no regulations. Now, if there's regulations and liabilities, you can get really creative, and that's where I specialize in. I don't want to pay for land where there's land that's free that's looking for me to reclaim. So you can get
Oh yeah,
into
that
these
kind of seems
rooms.
insane.
Yeah, it's insane. It's insane.
So the people that get that this money goes into a bond and it's supposed to be for reclamation of the property. Are they just not doing enough in your opinion? Like the regulations just aren't stringent enough to actually force them to do certain things to it? Because I feel like if you're going to give me money to do it,
Hmm.
I would definitely go try to find some topsoil somewhere, but I'm sure it's difficult to find enough to cover that whole area. But man, it'd be interesting to see just, unrolling a bunch of hay bales and what that would do.
Yeah,
But like the hydro seeding is kind of like counterintuitive because it's loaded with fertilizer. So like
loaded with fertilizer.
I mean,
Like,
you're zapping the soil right there.
well, the regulations aren't there for, soil biology.
Yeah.
They're there to mitigate risk and liability.
So their risk and liability is having a giant runoff that goes down.
Acid mine drainage, and it's what we call a whiskey score. They'll test the local water that's flowing from these sites into a body of water that's close to, residential areas, and it has to meet a certain whiskey score. That means how much selenium is in the water, how much conductivity is in the water, and they'll begin to measure these contaminants, and they can be in there. And not to say that it's a contaminant, it's a pretty harsh word, but it has to be at a certain level, or they can be fined. They have to show that they're improving that over time. And most of the reclamation processes is like I said before, if it looks green, it must be good. And it might look really green the first couple of years, but then you see nature, because nature's going to heal herself. You see all these pasture grasses that they planted in their hydro seed mix go away because it's just not time for them to flourish. And then you'll see a lot of these, you know, pioneer species begin to take over, like Lespedeza, like autumn olive, soil stabilizing plants, or, nitrogen fixing plants, because the soil needs nitrogen. So that's what's going to grow first. But from that, you see a lot of soil erosion. That's when you see the issues become a problem. They're just doing enough to where they're checking the box and they can get their money back.
So take me to like before they start mining, what do these places look like? Are they just like a mountain with trees?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Just
then
like a mountain with
they
trees.
they log them off and then they go down like how far are they mining down? Whereas like the topsoil is here, and then when you get on this property, it's like what, 30 feet down from where the old topsoil used to be?
Now, I don't know the exact numbers of that. I just know, they'll log it off and then they'll try to save the topsoil. They'll try to,
Yeah.
bulldoze it, save it. That way, when they reclaim it, they can put it back, and then they'll blow off the top. I mean, these guys are really skilled at what they do. Very, very skilled. Um, and it almost looks like a statue or a piece of art after they're done. We're up on a high wall in a lot of our places where there's almost like a stair of rock. That way, if something falls from the top, it'll land on
Hmm.
the stair. That way, it doesn't go into the road. Um, but after that process is done, after they extract the coal, then they try to put back what they took. So a lot of it is by then fill dirt. You have a mix of, a lot of big rocks and the soil that they bulldozed off initially. And they'll bring some stuff back in if they need to, but they're trying to address, they have to fix water. Water can't just fall and cause a mess. They're putting in water pathways. They're putting in ditches that's leading it back into an overflow, and then they're trying to make it green. That's what they're trying to do. And if there's any contaminants, they will plant species that will filter out some of the contaminants. I've seen some, use a lot of mushrooms, which is really, I mean, I applaud that. I applaud them, going that far. Um, but they're all their thing. It's not, I want to heal the land. I want to bring balance to the ecosystem again. It's, I have to have this box checked so that
Yeah.
now I can and get my bond back.
So your competitive advantage as far as coming into someone who is like, I'm over this liability, I want to move on from it. Do they actually deed it over to you and then you have like a certain, then you are the person that's on the hook with the state? Or is it some sort of like a land contract where you have to meet these requirements and then you get it deeded to you?
Both. We've
Yeah.
done both. And if it's deeded over, which I've only done, one time. because you're taking on the liability
Yeah.
of that. Now, as a private landowner, they're not going to go after you as much as they would want to go after a big company. Now, I'm talking about regulatory agencies like an EPA or anything like that. They're going to want to make an example out of the mine company and not you. But you are taking on a risk, and this is where I'm preaching this gospel. Like, this is a huge opportunity to have equity in this space. You're getting land very, very cheaply, oftentimes free. Sometimes you're getting paid to take it. Then you can, knowing what you know, knowing how to farm, knowing how to build soil, knowing how to restore ecosystems, you can get into the black very, very quickly.
Hey, eco farmers. This is Taylor Henry with Acres U.S.A. I hope you enjoy this podcast as much as I enjoy interviewing these folks. If you're serious about regenerative agriculture, I've got an incredible resource you need to check out, the Acres U.S.A. membership. You farm in the physical world, and you deserve a physical printed magazine to match. Since 1971, Acres U.S.A. magazine has been the leading voice in ecological agriculture, delivering the best insights from regenerative farmers, agronomists, and researchers to help you farm profitably without toxic chemicals. Our membership included physical and digital copies of the magazine each month of the year, which has always been a standard for Acres USA, but we wanted to over-deliver on content. When I acquired this business, I was happy to find that we had years of audio files from presentations at our annual EcoAg conference. And guess what? They were hiding. Well, not anymore. We developed this membership portal that gives you access to the recordings from farmers like Gabe Brown, Gary Zimmer, Joel Salatin, and Mark Shepard. We also include recordings of private events. Finally, if you are like me and you like listening to content, we are now producing a membership-only podcast of each issue of the magazine, so you can consume each article while you're out in the field. To make things even sweeter, you'll get discounts on books, workshops, and events to keep expanding your knowledge. So are you ready to take your farming to the next level? Join today for a ridiculously low price at eco-farming.com or see details in the notes. Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's one of the most unique situations I've ever heard of. So couldn't you, like, what are your soil tests telling you? Because, my mind would go to like, let's just bring in the amendments and pile it on. It's because, the biggest issue with that in the past is always, you have this initial investment in the land. It's difficult to turn around and invest another $1,000 or $2,000 an acre in the, amendments that it might require. But in this situation, I could see it making more sense where, and maybe this is what your business is, but you go in and get soil tests, get some, ideally some more topsoil, bring in the amendments, and you're looking at a really nice landscape in 3-4 years that even if you turn around and sold for 6-7 thousand an acre.
Yeah.
There's part of the process here, like getting roads established. Like, what is like the water situation? Are you able to even use the water that comes out of your well?
Yeah, a lot of the spaces we've been fortunate enough where, water is already there, like if it's connected to, the city. Other times we know how to harvest it. We know how to catch it off a building. And that's when your design's pretty important. I'm not going to have, 100 cows up there if I can only get so much water. So that's
Yeah.
really dependent on, the design and observation. When it comes to soil testing, I will admit we don't do a lot of it. I don't do a lot of soil testing. I test my soil by looking at the species that are growing, and I look at the presence of um, mushrooms, the presence of bacteria within the soil. We breed a lot of bacteria. We try to introduce as much biomass as we can. I think that a lot of things are a one size fits all, but putting organic material that decomposes on a piece of property is pretty close to it. When we have tested, when we're just beginning, the pH is very, very high. It's a very acidic soil. So the only way that we know how, and I'm sure there's many different ways, you can spend a lot of money and do some amendments. We just try to mimic, nature the best way that we can and get organic matter on these lands. And we've seen that the organic matter will neutralize the pH in the soil over time.
So where are you sourcing the organic matter? Is there leftover mulch and stuff on these sites that? you can use?
Well, carbon is pretty good to have in terms of like wood chips. So we partner with a lot of like the local tree companies. We've even purchased our own industrial size chipper. So it's
Yeah,
good
you
to
could
have
probably get
that.
that pretty cheap.
Yeah. When you're rotating animals on lands like these, there's a long rest period. Times it by two, what you would normally rest if you had just a normal pasture. So we capitalize on them being in a sacrifice paddock. And from that, we'll create really, really good compost. And we'll try to make it as nutrient dense as we can. And at the end, when we begin to turn it after the animals are back on the pasture, we'll inoculate it. We'll introduce it to different bacterias. We'll put accumulators in it like comfrey that will supercharge it, and then we'll spread that over on the pastures, over on the field. So that's probably the biggest key for us and how we can do what we do is these long-term stay paddocks and creating this compost.
You ever heard of a company called Hiawassee?
I haven't.
That'd be an interesting one for you to look at. They have a compost. I'm not going to even try to. I think it's called a digester. They take the
Okay,
compost and turn into a liquid form that you can spray over a lot of different areas.
well, that's cool.
Essentially extending your compost a lot further instead of just making your compost and just spreading that on the ground. Um, it also I could see it being beneficial for you just because of where you're at as far as you probably can't, because like what are you spreading the compost with? You probably can't really get manure spreaders on a hillside.
We don't. We put it in a big pile and we put chickens in there and we just
Yeah,
let them go to town. And this is I'm glad you said that because most of the areas we reclaim like 10 acres at a time.
yeah,
Like if we have a team of 7 people, and this is across the board, like one family is not going to take 300 acres of this type of land and reclaim it. Like they could do 20 for the rest of their life, the way that we do this. So I'm glad you said that because we do things very cheaply because we want to show people like anybody can do this type of work. So we spread wood chips by hand a lot. When we have a tractor, thank God, we got a tractor in year 3. So it was one of those things where I was mad and happy at the same time. I remember all the times I loaded wood chips up by hand, and now I can do it in 15 seconds. But most of what we do, I mean, it's down, downscale level. And I remember having someone come up and look at the property, and he suggested just get a bunch of wood chips and cover the whole pasture. And I get what he was saying. I mean, this was a Harvard graduate, person that was in this type of agriculture and did a lot of other projects. But if I don't have that, let's say I don't have access to a lot of wood chips like that, you can actually partner with the pasture. You can partner with those species that are growing and walk slowly and let those species do what they're supposed to do and why they're there. So we've decided to take that slow route, and from that, it's created many opportunities to tell the story, many opportunities to bring people that can't afford a tractor or can't afford an industrial size wood chipper and see, okay, well maybe there's a slower path, but it's still it holds the same reward as if we reclaimed it by putting 24 inches of wood chips on it versus the slow approach that we've done now. So
yeah. What are you looking for? Like, what type of cattle do you have? Do you have milking cows? Is there a certain breed they're looking for? I'm assuming the forage quality isn't like excellent. So
no, the when you begin, the forage quality is not that great, and you will have to implement. You'll have to bring some inputs in off farm to make sure that these animals are okay. We like dairy cows, and you can blame Beth Doherty for that. Beth and Sean. Um, we have Jersey cows. The breed doesn't matter for us because we just want to move cows. We want their presence on the pasture. In terms of like beef cattle, we have Angus just because that's what's available. That's what's closest to us. We have a bull on farm, and he's a Devon. Reason why we got a Devon breed is they're a little bit more calm. I learned this the hard way. I was a newbie in terms of having a bull, and I had a Jersey bull, and he was a
They're considered the psychos.
he's a jerk, and I
Yeah.
found that out very very quickly. He made a really good burger, but until I learned that, I mean, it's just a lot of trial and error and not knowing a lot about having a bull. But we have a Devon now because of their temperament, because most of our properties there's this ecotourism or this type of revenue generating industry present now. Um, where I'm from, Hatfield McCoy Trail System, ATV system, we have a lot of cabins that people can come and stay and ride the trails. So that affects it as well. It's all about observing and designing based on what you have. I don't want to have a Jersey bull up there. There's little kids running around and they want to come see the farm and they want to get some alfalfa pellets and feed it to the sheep. So
And Devons are actually pretty decent milkers too, aren't they?
they're dual purpose from what I've found.
Yeah.
And they taste pretty good too. So I think it's a win-win. And they're just cool cows. We've named ours. His name's Charlie Brown, and it fits.
Yeah.
He's just cool, just chills.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure. So that's one of the questions I have. I mean, it's the same thing I've done on my farm is we have a couple Airbnbs and, we do live in a little bit of a touristy type place. Nothing like it's not a major tourist attraction, but there's definitely a tourist thing in this community. But like you're saying that what drives your tourism? Is it the UTV trails? Is it just the mountains? I mean, obviously are pretty awesome. Um, but what helps with the area that you're in to draw those people in?
Yeah, right now it's the ATV trails. I mean, that's probably the only form of tourism that we have. It's starting to expand now where just our culture is desirable. Like people want to come and see the mountains. They want to take hikes. They want to pick berries. So they want to. I see a lot of potential retreats that people can come and just enjoy nature. But the number one driver is the Hatfield McCoy Trail system.
So when you like, do you guys have Airbnbs or what are you doing to capture some of that?
Well, a part of the company I work for, Coalfield Development, um, we provide on the job training to those that are facing barriers to employment. So it's those that are getting laid off or they're coming out of rehab or prison, whatever the case may be. They're having a hard time entering back into the workforce. So we have a sector to where we have a construction crew and they'll build cabins on this land. I think they're on the third one in one of our properties in Mingo County. So they'll learn how to do that, they'll build it, and then we partner with a local businessman that already has, ton of experience in the lodging industry, and they'll run, the lodge on their site, and in partnership, we'll have revenue from that. And it's 95% of those that rent out these spaces are trail riders.
Hmm. So are you looking at creating like they don't need to be super nice. They're just basic cabins stuck in the side of a hill, running water, bathroom.
It's pretty nice. It's different, especially where there's a little bit of competition here because it's their number one source of tourism.
Yeah.
You have some, that just do like a cabin type feel. We kind of want to go a little bit above that. So we have a lot of timber frame spaces, uh, kind of modern, rustic that looks really good, and then highlights a certain skill that someone can learn and then take with them beyond this program. So it's a little bit of step ahead. I'm pretty proud of it. I haven't, me personally, I don't build them, so I'm not
Yeah.
here taking credit for all of these. No, but those teams, those construction teams, they do a wonderful job.
So you said that you're tied into city waterline places, so are you not that far away from like a residential incorporated town?
Most of them are, and that's I try to look for that in terms of opportunities. I'll see, what some of these areas are close to, if they're close to a school system, if they're close to a nice neighborhood, if they're close to a city. Um, that could be a pretty good opportunity to start that project. Because if you're thinking of ways like an investor, and I always go back to, I'm a huge fan of Chip and Joanna Gaines. I'm a huge fan of what they've done in Waco, but they first got their start by the show Fixer Upper, where they would pick the worst house on the best street. And there was just something to that. And I've kind of mimicked that process in terms of land. So if it's close to, a school, especially, um, you can increase that property value a lot quicker than if you were in the middle of nowhere doing reclamation work. Now, there's a lot of sites that we have where you do not have city hookup, where you do have to harvest water from, pond creation or harvest rainwater.
And
Um,
because you can't, can you drill a well?
no, I mean, not on the landscapes that we've been on. We can't
Hmm.
get down that far. Um, so no, it's much easier just to harvest it.
Yeah, I could see a real interesting retreat, completely off grid style coming from something like that.
Yeah, that's the dream. I mean, that and residential places for we need people that would want to live here because we got to repopulate West Virginia because there's hundreds of thousands of acres that have been strip mined alone, millions in Appalachia. So, and kind of going back to a previous question you asked, I think that there's a real opportunity for homesteading, being the Appalachians where people are gravitating towards in terms of homesteading, and we're right in the dead center of it. So, I think we can capitalize on those that want to live a more simple life, and hopefully with that they get the reclamation bug at the same time. Because if you get if I inherit, let's say, 1,000 acre plot, I need 50 families that would want to live there. I mean, that's
Yeah.
for it to work. So
What is your process in finding these properties? Are you just looking, is there like a platform that has them listed, or are you just looking on normal land for sale platforms? Or are you trying to reach out before they get listed?
you can go that route. I don't. I have more success. One, you're very vocal about the sites that you already have, and that's you're causing foot traffic. You're having workshops, or you're having farm days, or you're having fairs where people come, and you have your story posted everywhere. People can easily show up at your farm and know exactly the process that that land went through and the benefits that come from it. Now, from that, I have people that approach me weekly. I get 2 to 3 emails of a landowner who has a certain amount of acreage that doesn't know what to do with it. Um, a really fun way is to get on Google Earth and to look. I'll pick an area, and I've got some videos that we want to put on our platform, of how you sit down and get creative and call a landowner. Um, I'll look at a good area, zoom out, and I'll see where there's an extraction industry, or harsh landscape or absentee ownership from a tax map, and then that's when you start to inquire. And that's how I've made most of my connections, is through that funnel. Now, there's a way you can get with an agent that has the connections to show you what's listed, what's not listed. That's a good way to go about it too. I just found the fun of it is just the creative, just being creative. You know, setting up deals. You know, selling yourself and that what you're doing and showing the proof of concept. That's where most of my projects have come from.
So on these projects that you're doing, are you raising funds for them? Are they coming through this nonprofit that you're a part of? What's like the end goal? Are you developing them and then selling them? What are you
Yeah,
doing with
the
them?
the beginning was all grant funded. Is showing the reclamation work from grants, and so that means we were really poor at first. So we were doing a lot of the reclamation work, making a chicken tractor out of trees that we cut down and tied them together. I mean, it was hard work. And then as we shown a proof of concept, there was more grant funding available, especially in our area. There's, a particular grant called the AMLR grant. It's the Abandoned Minelands grant that is just for economic development. So there's grant funding out there for this type of work, but also there's this pivot that we've made in the last year to where we're partnering with landowners as a company, and not as me personally, but as a company, we're partnering with landowners where they will then pay us to do this work, this reclamation work. So we've grown. We've grown in different facets of it, being a lot grant funded heavy work that we do, um, and then partnering with local businessmen or local landowners that will pay for the work that we do, because we have a proven track record of increased property value.
Yeah. So when you get paid for the reclamation, are you actually bringing livestock on the property, or is that just?
Every property that I've done, I've brought livestock on the property. It's just what I know how to do. I'm sure there's other ways to do reclamation. I try to stay in the lane that I know.
And what is like the species that you are the easiest for you to get on these properties?
Sheep is going to be the easiest. Um, I want to move towards a larger ruminant, just because of the impact, especially if you're doing multi-species. I'm a huge fan of multi-species rotations, just because there's different species that you place a demand on in terms of vegetation and soil biology. There's different bacteria that follow different species. So the easiest way, though, and where you're going to see the most dramatic change is running sheep. Sheep is going to be the easiest animal to get on the properties, because they're going to eat, especially where I'm from. You have a lot of these Lespedeza plants where a cow will eat it if it's really young, um, but a sheep will eat it when it's teenage years, and that's where we find most of it. And if they don't eat it, then nobody eats it. We'll have to get a pig to knock it down.
Yeah. What I'm just gonna pull up one of these photos. So are we looking at are these little plants right here, the Lespedeza that you're talking about
Yeah, that's
with
Cecilia
the yellow
Lespedeza.
tips?
Yeah,
Yeah. And then you have a pig. Is that just one pig or is there multiple pigs in that paddock?
that is one pig. That's the first animal that we got on that particular property.
And then you have an awful lot of chickens, which I'm sure helps a lot over time.
Chickens
So
help.
are you following those chickens in after the pig moves on?
No, it's vice versa. These two species aren't really in rotation. We'll put a pig on a paddock until we start to get that pig smell. We start to see where there's a lot of bare soil, and then we'll move them along. This was kind of prep. We didn't have a cow, I don't think, on this spot yet until we took care of a lot of that Lespedeza. And then the chickens, this is way too many chickens. But we were selling. That was a form of revenue that we were getting for the work, is selling chicken to the community.
And then here we have, I mean, that's some decent looking grass there. It's not bad.
Yeah, it's around year two. Um, you see a lot. You'll see a huge dramatic change within the first year of grazing, and then it kind of plateaus a little bit, and then you start seeing the soil respond, and it gets even better. So yeah, it's not bad.
I mean, they definitely eat it and do fine on it. I
And
mean,
keeping your numbers low. Like, a lot of
yeah,
people want to have too many animals. With that piece of ground, we're going to graze it, and then it's going to stay there, 60 days, sometimes 75 days. And that's a long rest period, but it needs it.
yeah, I would imagine so. Plus, you get a chance for them to reseed a little bit.
Yeah.
What, where do you see all this going? Like, what is it? What is your main focus? Is the Coalfield development something that you think is going to scale up, or is that really part of farming? Are you involving those people in farming operations at all as
Yeah,
part of
no,
that? And
Coalfield is all that I've done. These are their lands. They've employed me. Um, I started out as a crew chief. I was over the workforce that was there, and then I kind of went up in the company to now be the director of the organization, to be over all the crews. and they just do really good work. And I'm proud to be a part of such a good company, especially with what they do for the people. Like they really do a great job in terms of entering people back into the workforce that are ready. You know, they'll go even further. You know, we're not just going to teach you how to do a job. We're going to give you the tools to think differently, to how do you set a milestone in your life? How do you and we carve out time where this is important, and we put value on it. You know, personal or professional development. You know, what a lot of these, people that come don't have a driver's license. Well, they'll get a driver's license when they're a part of our program, but they'll learn how to set goals to get the driver's license. So I'm really proud to be a part of a company, and I see myself in some form or fashion, being connected with Coalfield Development. But I also see, with the Wild Country as a company we started last year, and it's a lot of the same work. I mean, I don't think I'll see myself doing anything else. But a lot of education, permaculture, design, and certification, but also what we've learned. It's really from I keep dropping the Dohertys, but they looked at me like, "Hey, a lot of people are looking for land, and you know how to get it. You need to help people." And I think that that's what we want to do with the Wild Country is helping people acquire land. And what how do you do reclamation? Where do I start? And giving them the platform to get connected to community, um, and have a place where when things don't go so well, that they can come back and ask questions and learn and perfect their skills. So I think that's where the Wild Country is going. you know Form of content creation, design. We do a lot of design work all across America, um, and then continuing to work in the permaculture space. I think every homesteader should get a permaculture certificate. It would save them a lot of money in the long run,
Yeah.
from all the mistakes. Even I think just knowing how to observe systems, how to recognize patterns in nature, it's going to save you a lot of resource because you can direct your attention to what needs to be addressed and not try to guess.
Hey there. Did you attend our EcoAg conference this year in Madison, Wisconsin? Well, if you didn't, or if you did, we've got the recordings now available. Get on-demand access to every session with the EcoAg recordings. Learn directly from the pioneers of soil health, livestock integration, and profitable regenerative systems, all at your own pace. Speakers include Gabe Brown, Alan Williams, John Kempf, Joel Salatin, and a lot more. We also have additional products that include the full-day workshops done by Matt Powers, John Kempf, Nigel Palmer, Jordan Green, Mark Shepard, and Austin Unruh. These workshops are in depth and will help you dig deep on the presenters' topics. Grab your recordings now at conference.eco-ag.com/24 recordings, or find the link in the notes. Because the best investment you can make is in your own knowledge. Now back to the show. So do you operate around the idea of the rewilding theory, or as far as like the ecological restoration theory?
I don't know a lot about the reason why I even know it at all is we started filming a documentary called Rewilding, and be like, oh, have you heard of this?
Because
Um,
I saw that, so that's why I asked.
yeah, I do. I also am a huge component of evolving. That makes sense. I don't. I think that the design is so perfect, and the planet that we live on, things won't be the same. And I do think that species come and species go. What's really important is how we've partnered and how we're living our life and how we're continuing to add to our systems and not being extractors. I think and whatever
Yeah.
comes from that, I'm good with.
Yeah. I was gonna ask your kind of idea about that because I get mixed opinions on the rewilding type theories where there's some people are really hardcore, and the basis of their argument is like we need to depopulate in some way, shape, or form,
I think
and it's
for
kind of a
me, I need
difficult.
more people.
Yeah.
I need
Yeah.
more people. It's just, I mean, it drives me crazy. There's so many hungry people in Appalachia, and you can get so many seeds out of one tomato. I just think it's priorities and I think it's systems. I think our systems really need to be reevaluated to where we're not just extracting. I think extraction is the problem, and it's not
Yeah.
participating in systems that add to. And that doesn't mean, be like Thanos and snap my fingers and half the population's gone. That's not, we don't need to do that or anything like that. We just need to be intentional in how we live our life. Um,
Yeah.
that there's systems that make sense and they add to, if to simplify it. Am I adding to? Am I bettering this space that I have the authority to live in or the capacity to govern?
So part of that is you mentioned you guys homeschool. You know, our kids are getting our oldest is 3, so we still have a couple more years. But I'm always interested in the idea of homeschooling and, kind of your perspective about it and what are the positives, what are some of the things that are difficult. I'm sure we could do a whole podcast on that, but give me your
Yeah,
quick overview.
my wife's the genius, and she does a lot of teaching. I get to introduce like Nacho Libre.
Yeah.
That's my what I bring to the table. What I really like about homeschool is that one, they're not in a building all day under fluorescent lighting. They're not having to get up at 4:30 in the morning to catch a bus. There's so many things we do that just doesn't make sense. Um, I think setting up kids to kind of fail in those areas, but we really get to lean into their rhythms and we get to be unique with each child. So one child's going to learn a lot different than another one. Someone needs this one child needs, hands on to be outside, to be in nature. The other one really likes to read. So you kind of get to cater towards the kid and their personality. One of the biggest things for me, because we could spend a whole podcast on talking about this, we have got to introduce business and entrepreneurship, and all of them have started a business. Have they been successful? One of them has, she makes killer cookies. I was like shocked. I thought, oh, we'll start a little cookie business and you can, raise money to do whatever. And then she made me eat the cookies. I'm like, dang, that's pretty good. So just learning how a different way to think that they don't really teach in the school system. And I've heard a lot of people, give this example is we can get stuck in a poverty mindset to where we can't afford certain things. But an entrepreneur says, how can I afford certain things? How can I, fix a problem? So now our kids, they're starting to pay attention to problems that they can fix. So that's one of the biggest things. I'm so pro homeschool because I'm teaching them things that I didn't get to learn going to a public school, and especially around entrepreneurship and problem solving. And I love it. It's fun. So much
Yeah,
fun.
that shift in a phrase, when I grew up, it was always, well, we can't afford this, we can't do that, we can't do this. And if you just switch "we can't" with "how can I," that changes perspective a lot. And that's just like one of the core principles of money and entrepreneurship.
Yeah. And there's this weird divide between homesteading and making money that I just don't understand. Like, and understand, like, stay true to your convictions. You're wanting to, stick it to the man, exit the system, and be off grid and all that. But I feel like homesteaders could be in a better spot in terms of
Yeah. Well,
finance, financially.
I think that comes from a couple different segments of people. You obviously have the people that enter into homesteading who've never really had to worry about money
Mm-hmm.
because, if they inherited something and it just isn't a problem for them to solve. Because I always say money is a problem that just needs to be solved, and however that looks. But I think if you look at a lot of like the successful homesteaders, they're hustlers, and they, figure out how to either live well below their means for a long time, and
Mm-hmm.
but in order to do that, like, money is a thing. It's a problem that needs to be solved.
It is. It is. That's why I'm a big component on, because I meet with a lot of people trying to find land, and in their mind, they have this turnkey homestead in their mind, like perfect pastures, white picket fence, and you're going to pay top dollar for that. And if that's what
Yeah.
you want and that's what you can afford, go for it. But if you thought like an investor wouldn't buy that. An investor would go into some of these landscapes that we work on day to day because you can have so much equity very, very fast. I felt like if we could approach that even as landowners, as homesteaders, to where, you know, your perfect homestead is achievable, but it's something that you build towards. And you become
Yeah.
in a much better spot in terms of having equity.
Well, you have so much more flexibility when you get some equity in it. So when you say they get equity, are you able to actually bring an appraiser back out after 3, 4 years, and do they actually value the improvements that you did? So
Well,
you
you're
can
going
get
to
it.
have, yeah, 100%. If we were doing, if we were partnering with someone and doing the reclamation work, we'd have a yearly appraisal. You want to have one before you start and every year after that. And that's some of the business models that we've had in the agreements is shared property value.
Yeah.
So we could share 25% or up to 50% of increased property value. Because
So what are those appraisers looking at? As
you want to get one that knows not just structural appraisals. That you want to get one that knows, how much, like a farm appraisal. People that specialize in looking at, soil quality, potential. That's the appraisal that you want, and you want to get one that both parties agree to. Um, that's very, very important. So,
yeah. Yeah, because if you can actually get that to where a bank accepts that appraiser, then you have so much flexibility.
mhm,
But I always tell people, like in our area, we deal with, from the real estate perspective, I wouldn't say an appraiser from a bank comes out and understands the quality of the property that you've created as
mhm,
far as like just open land versus wooded land. Um, And I think you actually have to get to the open market and let the market decide. So like my argument always, it's kind of theoretical in a sense where it's like you can buy this property, improve it. And I believe that there is, exactly what you described. There's the homesteader person that wants the project done, ready for them to move in, and they're willing to pay a top
mhm.
dollar, or the people who have a second home, or there's a whole group of people that are willing to invest in land, um, that would drive that value up. But to actually have an appraiser that the bank accepts, that gives you a ton of flexibility.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to why we try to find spots that are close to high property value.
Yeah.
Anyways, that makes that process a little bit easier.
Yeah, for sure. Um, all right. I guess what's kind of like the final message that you want to leave people with? Where should they find out more about you, and anything else you want to talk about before we wrap it up?
And I appreciate you having me on. I've learned a ton by what you do, and I'm a huge fan of this company. So I'm really honored to be a part of the podcast and the show. I will say, just encouraging those that would listen, that are kind of in that mode of being stuck and not knowing where to go to live out their dreams. Say, be patient. I know that God doesn't give us dreams or promises that doesn't come to pass. So I would hold on to that. And if you want to connect with me, our website's thewildsea.com. We're launching a community by September. And these are classes that you can take. One of them is land acquisition. We'll actually partner with you and help you find land and help you plan it out. And then some permaculture certification, and then just being a part of the community, having a place to learn how to homestead, from raising chickens to some butchery. So look for that in September, or if you just want to connect through email. I wrote an ebook on how to find land, how to find the land that's looking for you. I will happily give that out for free. Just shoot me an email, and I would look forward to connecting and building a relationship that way. So, thanks, Taylor.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time and good luck with everything that you're doing.
You as well.
Thank you for listening to the Acres USA podcast, a podcast production of Acres USA. Find us on Spotify, Apple, Google Play, and other popular podcast platforms. Acres USA is North America's oldest publisher on production scale organic and regenerative farming. For more than 50 years, our mission has been to help farmers, ranchers, and market gardeners grow food profitably, regeneratively, and with nature in mind. Find our books and other Acres USA media and learn about Acres USA events at acresusa.com. Read our online magazine at members.acresusa.com, and we'd like to thank Acres USA staff for their contributions to producing this podcast. This episode was edited and engineered by Weston Larson of Acres USA. We're grateful to our guests for taking the time to talk with us about their experiences.